bring us back just a little bit, because I think we're maybe we've got a couple of ideas about what we mean by credentialing and certification here. What are we certifying? You can certify a program. You can certify a person having passed that program. But those are two different things. Universities with credential degrees. You can certify somebody's capability to perform a particular task. So what level are we talking about?
You asking me that?
I'm asking the panel. That's a question.
Well, I'll start with it. What we're certifying is that the person is capable, coming out of the Certified Knowledge Manager program, of being capable of running a KM program. The lower levels have different criteria. To be a knowledge worker who is totally aware of what's going on in the knowledge age and how it impacts their career is a totally different level. So you realize about 4 or 5 different levels of certification, and that specific question could be asked of each one of them. And it's different. The answer is different for each one.
Denise, I think we have to keep in mind that knowledge and knowledge management are always context sensitive and situation dependent, and therefore how do you teach somebody knowledge that is context sensitive and situation dependent? It's an impossible situation, literally. What you can do is give them as much knowledge in the subject as possible, in the sense of most organizations have 4 fundamental processes that if they're not good at, they won't exist. Creating ideas, solving problems, making decisions, and implementing those decisions. Then you may not know that that's what they're doing, but that's what we all do every day in many situations. How can you take knowledge and communicate it in such a way that the receiver understands it well enough at whatever level you're dealing with to create some new ideas during that process of teaching, if you will, or learning, or to solve some problems. In math, it's easy. They give you problems all the time. But how about liberal arts and so forth? There are also problems in thinking to get the people to express and experience this point about how do I find a solution to this problem? Because that's what they're going to be doing when they're doing knowledge management out in the field. And the same thing with decisions. I've got 2 choices. Which one is optimum? Which one makes sense under these boundary conditions, which I can describe? So there's ways to do it, but unfortunately it takes time. It's not easy. From a high school viewpoint, you won't find many teachers that can do it because of the competency problem there. And also, most high schools are teaching memorization, and that's not me, that's the National Research Council, and therefore the students are going to want to memorize the answer, but when they get out in the field, they've lost it.
I want to approach this go back to one of the questions, approach this a little different way, about whether or not this kind of process or framework or stair-step, whatever you want to call it, is necessary. I think the answer is yes. And the reason I think it's yes is because in the past 10 or so years, I've surveyed a lot of the institutions, see what GW is doing, see what Douglas is doing, see what APQC offers in the way of training, and a host of others. And we don't have a national standard. It's pretty much an open marketplace, and people get together and try to do the best they can, say this is what I think it is. Now, I'm just going to pick on APQC. They have members. The members help drive what the needs are. They develop the training based on those needs. They go out and do the studies and the surveys and come back and put these very rich reports together. But it's a constantly evolving process. So credentialing, certification, whatever you want to call that is important to decide. I think there's a more fundamental question that has to be approached, and I kind of like a university model, and Douglas has kind of built this in here when you see 101 up to 404 kind of stuff, is I think, and this goes to some of the earlier panel discussions, I think we need to identify what functional areas do KM people get involved in. And then I think we need to break those down into learning objectives and decide, okay, within ethnography, how much does the member of your knowledge team need to know versus the CKO? How expert do they need to be? Break all of those areas down. And I mean, this is complex. This is a lot of work. But to break it down and then have curriculum available so that somebody can go for just-in-time training on something they need right then. And I guess I go to a, whatever you want to call this, credentialing certification issue. When I hire a plumber, I want to see bonded, licensed, and certified. And what that assures me is, and this is for the public good, what that assures me is I've got somebody who is, now you understand, coming out of school, regardless of the credentials of the school, you get minimally competent people because everybody graduates at a 70 or 80 percentile. So there's some minimum standard and you get what you get. But the point is, from a public confidence standpoint, I'm getting somebody that somebody has looked at, somebody has applied some standards to and said, this person meets at least the minimum standards to go out and sell their product or to represent this. I think that's what's missing. And so what I think is, as I look around the array of things that are out there, I have no deep confidence that even when I look at somebody's resume, I understand what it says when they say KM expert. And it takes an interview with them and to test them and ask specific questions to see if within the field of KM they have the arsenal that I need to do my job, because we don't have a standard. And I think that's where this kind of, something like this is critical, that we can go from a 101 where you get the KM overview, the awareness, and you learn what it is, and then maybe a smattering of electives based on what their organization requires, and then you work up the chain so that when I hire for a CKO and it says certified CKO, I don't have to worry about what they actually know. There has been some kind of universal standard applied to that.
I'd like to take that a little bit further, just launching from your term knowledge management expert. When I teach executive development and leadership in my MBA program, most often I start out by indicating to them that in my 40-year career, I've fired more MBAs than are in the room. So the MBA has no meaning to me, just as you've just described. And in fact, all that says to me is that you've gone through a process. And depending on which school, it might be more rigorous than another school. It doesn't tell me what you learned. And I don't even look at the GPAs when I'm hiring. And one of the fears I have is that term KM expert or master of KM on the resume. That's an arrogance factor. And one of the difficulties with my MBA learners are they're a bunch of arrogant buttheads, okay? They think that with a bloody MBA that they're going to be God's gift to business. And the executives that we queried when we were coming up with a project-based, competency-based MBA said, give us people with humility and experience. Now, humility is one of those emotive qualities that unless you're teaching or administering the emotional quotient inventory as part of your program in leadership, they don't realize that they need some of these emotive capabilities. So again, from is it necessary, I can already tell you the MBA degree, which by the way has a much higher profile than a Master's of Knowledge Management, has been devalued immensely by the fact that a lot of people have gotten it. And I don't think they actually got it. What they got is a bunch of check boxes that got them through. So I'm a little bit fearful that if we want to teach critical thinking, decision making, problem solving, sense making, we could do that in a philosophy degree.
Or you could.
But why not have a component of a KM degree that teaches that?
I just wanted to follow up, Michael, about your distrust or your experience with devalued MBA. Would you, if given two different candidates who you've interviewed and who you think might be plausible, I mean, would you actually accept somebody who doesn't have an MBA?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And in fact, I've generally hired people with Masters of Arts or Bachelor of Arts when I was an executive.
To do the kind of work an MBA would do.
Yeah, because they usually have better critical thinking skills.
And if I could just follow on one thing, I absolutely agree with you because you have to talk to the person and find out exactly what their chops are in this field. But I go back to what I loosely call the public good, is I can't expect everybody out there to do their due diligence. They expect us to do that for them. And so when I go to a hospital and I need to be treated for something, I'm placing trust in the sheepskin on the wall that says this person's been through training. Does that mean they're a good doctor? Well, I can do some due diligence on that and run some checks and stuff. But at a fundamental level, I have to place trust in the institution that gave them that certification, that accredited them and said, here you go, now we're setting you loose to go treat people. So I think we need to, I would be more comfortable if we viewed it in that sense. Okay, what do we owe the people we're doing this for, and what can we do as a body to make sure that our body of knowledge management and whatever that umbrella covers, the people we're putting out there, are they the best we can make them, and are we willing to stand behind that and say this is what you're getting? And my concern right now, like I said, is that whether I get the COP training from APQC, or I take one of Douglas's modules, or I go to any of the other vendors or public institutions out there, I don't actually know what I'm getting. I know they've got it, but and I guess it's because I'm so embedded in this, I understand the different nuances, and I'm not quite sure what the standards are in there. That's why I think we need something.